I can tell you dozens of times, right out of the mouth of a client's client has come, this is your core message. This is who you are. Say this. And it really is a very, very powerful thing to do.
Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the Time to Thrive podcast, our 100th episode. Woohoo! We've hit triple digits and we couldn't have done it without you, our amazing listeners and guests who've supported us every step of the way. From inspiring stories and actionable business strategies, this show has been all about helping business owners thrive, and we're just getting started. Today, we're celebrating this amazing milestone with an incredible guest who embodies the very spirit of what it means to build smart, sustainable success. Jantsch is a renowned marketing consultant, speaker, and author, best known as the founder of Duct Tape Marketing. With over 30 years of experience, John has helped thousands of small businesses and marketing professionals systematize their growth through practical strategy-first approach. He's an author of several influential books, including Duct Tape Marketing, one of my favorites, The Referral Engine, and The Ultimate Marketing Engine. John also hosts the long-running Duct Tape Marketing podcast, recognized as one of the top business podcasts for entrepreneurs and marketers. Welcome to the show, John.
Well, thanks for having me.
That was an extra long introduction.
Yeah, well, you stick around long enough, those bios just get longer.
I love that. All right, for our super random question, pick a number between 1 and 5.
Oh, 1 and 5. I was going to pick 7. That didn't work, huh? All right, 4.
Let's do that. 4. Okay. Oh, what's the most creative excuse to get out of something you didn't want to do?
Huh. That's hard because I rarely do that. Can't think of
When
a
I
time
saw
when
that
I've
question, I thought that'd probably be my answer. Just dig in, do the thing.
That's right. If I said I was going to do it, I'm not going to make up an excuse. So I would say I'm more likely to tell you I'm just not going to do it.
I love that. Honesty, transparency, we all love that. One of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of yours is that you are so practical and tactical when it comes to, and the whole name, duct tape marketing, kind of embodies that, right? It's like sometimes you just gotta stick some tape on it and make it work, right?
That's right.
But I know you always like to start with strategy. What does that look like in practice for a small business owner? And especially nowadays, there's so many so-called tactics out there.
Well, it really comes from, maybe I'll come at it backwards. I mean, it really comes from so many people just jumping into tactics. I mean, I can't tell you how many times a business has called us and said, we need you to do blah, blah, blah for us. And I was like, well, yeah, you probably do, but there's so many other things that are connected. All these platforms and tools and things that we do, well, they're all interconnected. And so you can't really do any of them in a vacuum. And so what, at the very, very least, what we want to do is figure out, who makes an ideal client for us. There's a good chance that it's a lot of the people that we maybe have as clients today are not ideal. So we want to really narrow our focus on, what does ideal look like, rather than we'll take anybody who says they'll pay us, because it allows us to really attract more of those ideal clients because we talk specifically to what their needs are. But it also really allows us to grow the business with a group that we probably can do even more with. And so that's the first part. So in some ways, developing strategy is deciding what to do, but it's also deciding what not to do. And
No,
so,
right.
then the next thing is we want to figure out, what is the true value that we bring to clients? What problem are we really solving for them? And it's rarely what we do. It's really, our process or our product. It's the experience. It's some problem that they got solved. I mean, think about a lot of things you buy in your life. There's some cases of things that you'd rather not buy, actually, but you buy it because it solves a problem. And so, we need to focus on that instead of telling about our great product or great service. We need to focus on understanding how we can promise to solve our ideal client's greatest problem. And that really comes down to something we call a core message. And the next piece that we really try to develop then is, what's the journey that our ideal client wants to go on? The perfect journey, and it's not become a customer. It's to understand, first they have to know about us, but then they have to like us and then trust us, or yeah, trust us. And then, in some cases they want to try the buying experience. We want to stay at a certain level. Then we want to retain those clients. We want to do repeat business. So what are we doing to intentionally do that? And then finally, we want those people to become advocates. So, you know, we have to intentionally design all of those stages into our marketing. So at the very least, I mean, we then get into editorial and we get into what the platforms are, that we might use to attract that ideal client. But initially, it's just let's narrow our focus on who we want to attract. Let's nail the value that we bring that nobody else does, and then let's create that end to end customer journey. And now we can start going and talking about what's the website need to look like, or what social media do we need to create, but only based on that foundation, because it really stops us from doing a lot of things that are either watering down our brand or they're just unnecessary.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you've been in business for any period of time, it becomes the cautionary tale of not all customers are created equal. And, some will have scope creep that, that they take more than they're giving kind of thing, where they just become problem clients that you're just having to deal with over and over. And it takes your focus off what you really need to be doing. That I think as a new business owner, that is probably some of the best advice anyone could give you is what you just said right there, and to stick to it and see the value in it
Yeah, it's hard though. I mean, especially when you're just getting
when
started.
you're
Somebody
hungry.
says,
Yeah.
"Yeah," it's like, "Well, I don't have I don't have many clients, so I sure need this one." But you're right. I mean, one of the things that you learn over time is the opportunity cost that it kind of robs as well, right? Because
Right.
you'd be better off going out looking for that ideal customer, spending time networking or whatever it is, rather than kind of becoming a slave to that client that just wants to nickel and dime you or something.
Right. Perfect. Okay, so now let's switch a little bit over to positioning your brand or repositioning your brand. If a lot of businesses start out, they don't give brands a lot of thought. They get a little bit down the road, and then they're like, "Oh, what is this brand thing I keep hearing about?" What are some first strategic moves that people can make when it comes to, um, you know, putting that brand out
Sure.
there?
Well, so let's go back to marketing strategy, because a lot of times people really have trouble defining that. I've given a couple ideas of what we do, but for us, there really are three components of marketing strategy, and they all have to be looked at somewhat independently, but certainly intentionally. First and foremost, before you start thinking about building a marketing strategy, and I'll get to brand in a moment,
Mhm.
it needs to be built on your business foundation. Where are you trying to go with this business? What do you want it to be? Are you trying to grow something that you can exit, at some point? So all of those questions, I think, need to come into play before you even start thinking about how we're going to market this business. But then for us, a marketing strategy has three components: a brand strategy, a growth strategy, and a customer strategy. And what happens is a lot of times people think about marketing, they think about how do I get the phone to ring, the growth strategy
Right.
component of it. And so the brand strategy is really, we started talking about the ideal client, like who are we trying to attract? What are we going to say that is ideally going to, really make them say, oh, you're talking about me, you're going to attract me. And then, it does get into some of the things. A lot of times people talk about logos and colors and visuals and graphics. I mean, all those are communicating, that core message to
Right.
that ideal client. So, some amount of studying, what those components should be, is the first part of brand strategy. Now, if you're just getting started, in some ways you're just hypothesizing. It's like here's who we want to work with. Here's the offer that we want to make. And so the other component of that is you have to constantly be monitoring. Like, how is this message landing? Are we attracting the right clients? Why aren't we attracting the right clients? Maybe we actually need to be pivoting over to this market. So a lot of brand strategy is also analytics of what's actually going on in our business, because there are a lot of, I mean, I would say most businesses are not today what they started out to be,
Right.
and some of that's just because the market tells you, classic example was the pandemic. A whole lot of businesses shifted because it's like, oh, we don't have a market anymore. We
Yeah.
better go over here. But I think I think, and I'm not talking about just saying, oh, I'm tired of my message today, so I'm going to work with somebody else. But really constantly monitoring the market, and frankly, right now, I mean, we're going through. I've been doing this a long time, and change is inevitable. Every year it seems like.
Mhm.
I think we're seeing wholesale change. By the month, feels like right now.
Yeah. So, I'm a big proponent of planning and systems and, um, knowing where your destination and reverse engineer that with your action strategies. And I know you are too. That's one of the things I love about you. Can you talk a little about turning marketing into a system and what that looks like?
Well, and again, that's why I really like strategy because it allows you to say, okay, then for the next, here are the priorities then for the next quarter. Here are the things that we think are going to actually um, make some impact on, where we're trying to go. So having that kind of roadmap, I think makes it easier for you to plan and not just wake up on Monday and say, what should we do? And so that's really to me always been the idea of a system is to actually say, look, we're going to have a core message. We're going to have a point of view. We're going to stick to it. We're going to design all of our content around communicating that point of view. We're going to deliver value in a certain way. So that can all be systemized, and you can actually teach other folks in your organization to do it. Now, I've been doing that for about 25 years and calling it a system. Frankly, some of the system is theoretical. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not like there's a software or there hadn't been, that you installed for that. But we're actually getting a lot closer to that. AI is really we are actually working on a complete AI marketing system that we are installing inside of businesses. We build their brand bot. We build their all the things that communicate their voice and their tone and their message. And then we're able to actually use this tool then to create content and to create social media and to create better ads and to do SEO. And so I feel like I've been saying marketing's a system for 30 years and I feel like we're finally actually getting to where it can be a tangible product as a system.
Yeah. And yeah, the AI piece of it, it's that balance between, people who resist change
Yeah, yeah.
and because AI can feel a little scary, like what is that all about? Are robots taking over the world? At the same time, we want to keep that human element inside of our business because our business is about relationships and building affinity with customers. But I do think when you are able to package it in the way that you're talking about, it allows you more time to focus on the relationship because you're not worried about those kind of back end type activities.
100%. I mean, I think that first off, I think that the relationships and the brand are actually going to become more important than ever going forward. And I think that you're absolutely right. I'm finding personally that a lot of the things that maybe used to take time, or we used to really have people that were doing work that was important, but it wasn't altogether that fulfilling in some
Right.
cases. Writing metadata for web pages is is important, but it's not that fun. And so it's really freeing people to do some of the work that I think is more creative, and as you pointed to, focusing on relationships, which is really is really the thing that I think people crave more of, but it's also the thing that's really the business in a lot of ways.
Yeah, a lot of businesses can't afford. That's one of the reasons why we started our Time to Thrive initiatives because they're at the agency side. When COVID happened, we had a lot of businesses call us like, "Help, we're gonna die here."
Right.
But they couldn't really afford agency rates. So we kind of created that Time to Thrive piece of things for the smaller businesses to give them some assistance, some self-help kind of training and things like that. But where do small business owners go wrong when they get into that DIY piece of marketing?
Well, um, again, it's tough when you don't have a dollar. It's hard to invest a dollar, right?
Right.
But and so it can feel like you're saving money, to do a lot of the things DIY. But it's the, I mentioned opportunity costs. That's where I see it really hurting. The highest payoff work that a business owner quite often can do is marketing, innovating their fulfillment, innovating their product. And they get really bogged down into figuring out how to build a WordPress website. Sure, they can probably do it, but they can probably find somebody today to get them pretty far along for $200. And would they be better off, out there going to networking events and knocking on doors or whatever it takes to actually get clients? And so there's a brilliant book that I recommend all the time. I mean, I've always believed this philosophy, but I think he really articulates it extremely well. And it's a gentleman named Dan Sullivan who created Strategic Coach. And the book is called Who Not How. And you can sum the whole idea of the book in that, business owners look at all the work that needs to be done, and often will say, how can I get all this done? And true entrepreneurs look at what needs to be done and say, who can I get to do this? And I think that
Yeah.
that mentality or that mindset is really necessary, but it can feel hard when you feel like, well, I don't have the money to invest in that. But it's pretty short-sighted, because that's how you have to look at those things, as an investment. And if you use all of your time, which is the only thing you can't make more of, doing work that's not very high payoff, you're never really going to gain any momentum.
Yeah. And I think there's 2 sides of that coin too. There's the strategy side, you don't know what you don't know, and there's the execution side, if you're doing this, what are you not doing? So, you gotta weigh those things out. Let's talk a bit about content, because I love believe me, I love some good content. A great lead magnet, a great resource, a great tool. You've been known to say that content is the voice of strategy. Can
Yeah.
you explain what that means and how content could change depending on where someone is in their customer journey?
Yeah, so a big part of strategy for us is communicating to your ideal client, how you're the one uniquely suited to solve their challenge, that you are so trustworthy that it's worth paying a premium to work with you,
Mhm.
and I think content is a tremendous vehicle. It's become really the vehicle to communicate those things. It's certainly become an expectation. I mean, most people want to go and find and consume content and do their own research today 70-80% of the time before they actually even contact a business or start having a sales conversation. And so that getting that content out along the customer journey, being able to communicate, being able to answer the questions and the objectives that somebody has when they just start their search, as opposed to when they're just now starting to try to make it, they understand what they're trying to solve now, and now they're trying to make a decision. Content really at every one of those stages in the customer journey is how you stand out, and it's become an expectation now. Having said that, everybody gets that. And so consequently, we have this flood of kind of garbage content. And as for all the good things that AI can do, one of the things it can do is produce a lot of garbage content, certainly as well.
Yeah.
And so today, that whole idea of brand and content really have to go hand in hand. So you have to tell personal experiences, you have to tell client experiences. It's not enough to tell somebody how to do something. You have to also prove that you've done it and
Mhm.
show, results, and show the stories along the way of somebody getting that result. And so content is still the voice of strategy, but there's no question the bar has been raised in terms of what it takes to actually cut through the clutter today.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna ask you about what do you do to cut through the noise, but I think you really answered that, because the noise right now is AI generated content. To stand out, tell a story that
Yeah.
really resonates with people and creates an emotional connection.
Yeah, and one of the easiest ways to do it is just get in the habit of interviewing your clients. What are because I started doing this 25 years ago, but I still think it's the most powerful thing I do. Is when we start working with a client, we actually interview their clients, 8 or 10 of them, because I have learned over the years that I could ask you, what do you do that's amazing? What do clients value about what you do? And you might not know, or you might not be able to to articulate it, but boy, your clients can, and they'll say it in ways that,
You didn't think
are
of.
just raw
Yeah.
and and real
Yeah.
and authentic. And we used I can tell you dozens of times, right out of the mouth of a client's client has come, this is your core message. This is who you are. Say this. And it really is a very, very powerful thing to do. So in terms of creating content, your clients, their stories, we used to call it user generated content, which I think is such a terrible term, but their stories
Mhm.
are really the proof that you do what you say you do. But it's in their words, and I think that's far more authentic and certainly far more believable.
Well, and the next piece of that ties into this is referrals and creating a referral system that works that we and I find that a lot of my clients don't like asking their customers for referrals because they feel like now they're being pushy or salesy or whatever. What would you say to that?
You must not deliver value then. You, I
Ouch.
mean, it's really, I mean that could be the only reason why you wouldn't want to ask your clients, because if you're making their life better, if you're creating a transformation in their lives, who are you to actually be the one to not let them bring that to their friends, neighbors, and colleagues? I mean, that's just a shame.
Yeah,
I know that sounds kind of harsh, and I'm halfway being facetious, but
yeah,
that's really the way they need to look at it. Is like, if I know that I bring a lot of value to the world, then why would I be ashamed to actually go and let my people that I've helped, who can tell the true story, help their friends, neighbors, and colleagues?
yeah. You don't get what you don't ask for in anything, right?
That's right.
Um, Word of mouth, so important. I mean, I think, that whole setting up systems for asking for referrals, asking for testimonials, it creates that what you call advocates, right? I call brand ambassadors. Just having intentionality around that purpose. Um, if a company is ready to scale, how do they need to evolve? And I've experienced, and I'll, expand on it a little bit. I experienced this myself in my business that there is like this point, this ceiling that you hit where your profit margin decreases rather than increasing because as you're pushing to grow, your overhead goes up and you haven't quite caught up to it yet, So how can you adjust your systems to try and minimize that effect?
So the way that I look at scaling is there need to be three elements in play, and they all have to work. You can't have two of them. If one kind of wheel is out of balance, then the whole thing falls apart. So the first one is a message and a package. So it is, like for us, we've talked about marketing as a system, and we do strategy first. And that message of why strategy is so important and that marketing is a system, and we're able to package that message up in a way that it is clearly a differentiator. And what that differentiator allows us to do is number two, charge a premium, charge a much higher price for what we do than other people that are just selling commodity, same, me too tactics. Now, the third piece of that, though, that's just as important, because it's great if you've got a great package and you're pricing it and making a lot of money, but now all of a sudden you're working harder and and
Right.
balls are dropping. So you also have to have a fulfillment system that is repeatable and teachable. And I think that's one of
Mhm.
the things that we've brought to the world in a lot of ways. A lot of marketing is looked at as one-off, as bespoke, as created from scratch every single time. What do you need? Okay, we'll build it for you. What do you need? We'll build that for you. And that can be nice, but it'll also drive you crazy trying to scale a business. And
Right.
so what we've done is we have, over trial and error and lots of experimentation, we have built a marketing system for strategy first that is the closest thing to a product that you could create. And we're able to teach. In fact, we have licensed it to over 400 agencies around the world. We have, folks who do not have years and years of experience that are able to operate this marketing system and run strategy first for our clients. And so it's those three components. You have a package and a point of view that, that is attractive and is differentiating. You charge a premium for that. And then you actually have a fulfillment system that is repeatable and then consequently scalable, and really allows you to make that margin, even though you're now delegating or hiring.
Hmm. And so what would be your advice for someone who's in freelance, the solopreneur, and they want to grow into a business that's beyond themselves? What would be your advice to them?
Well, the first thing that most solopreneurs have to do, because they got into business and it's like it's just them, so I'm doing everything right. And
Right.
so what happens is they get a couple clients and they start fulfilling, but they get kind of stuck because it's like, well, now I just don't really have any time. I don't even have time to hire somebody,
Right.
to right. Excuse me. And so what I often tell people early on is the world has changed so much. I mean, you can get experts and talents and assistants, all over the world
Yes.
that are very, very talented, are very affordable. And so what I tell people, even if you're that solopreneur, you get one client, go out and find somebody that can take things off of your plate,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of work that we do that we can probably pay somebody $10 an hour to do 15, 20, and it's good wage for them, given where they are and the economic circumstances in their countries, and so if you even look at just doing that, it might be a couple $100 a month, that you're doing. But what it's going to do is free up that time, because there's a lot of things that you do as a business owner that might be worth two, three, 400, 5,000, dollars an hour. But if you don't have the time to focus on those, building strategic relationships with, referral sources, things like that, I mean, that can pay you millions, over the years, done correctly. But if you're too busy sending out invoices and replying to emails and things that certainly other people can do, you'll never be able to get out of that rat race. So that's the first thing. And then obviously it starts as you start growing. I tell people, get bookkeeping out. Unless you're like an accounting business or something, get bookkeeping out of your business immediately, because there are a lot of people that love doing that. That'll keep you out of trouble. That'll make sure that your cash flow is continuing. I mean, just get that off your plate immediately, and then you can start looking. Now you can start, the things you can never have, until you really get to the point where you've got a team, in place. I mean, you've got to focus on marketing, 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 sales and marketing. That should be 50% of your time, as a solopreneur, new business, until you get to the point where you then can, start, offloading whatever it is your business does. If you're an accounting firm, if you're a remodeling firm or something, you want to start growing to the point where you're offloading the fulfillment of the business, and you're still, that owner of the business, and this is where some people kind of, fail, is because they like doing the thing that the business does, but at a certain point, they scale to the point where it doesn't make sense for them to do that anymore. They need to work on
Right.
strategy. They need to work on marketing, and growing the business. And that's the challenge for a lot of people, is what the skill that maybe got you into business is not necessarily the same skill that's going to help you grow the business.
Well, then it's really considering where do you want the business to go? How big do you want it to get?
Yeah.
You love what you're doing, keep doing that.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah,
stay.
and that's a great point too, because a lot of times people just go through like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, right? And they never really give some consideration of like, no, I want this type of business, so it can be this way, or I want this type of business, which means I have to go out and I have to hire, I have to build a leadership team.
Yeah. I find there's a lot of mindset challenges around everything that you just said because,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember we're almost 17 years old now as an agency, and, um, I hired and, pretty quickly had to hire an assistant, and I found any kind of delegation just made me so anxious because it was my baby, and so I had to get past that. In order to build a team, you have to get past that control freakish nature that a lot of us have, and just train people well, create systems, and let it
There's
go.
a book, another book I'll mention. I do a podcast, as well as so I interview a lot of authors. So I know more about a lot of books that are out there that most people should know, I suppose. And so there's a book called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Yeah,
That's a
read it.
great one that you
Mhm.
should recommend. And there's a comment in there that he makes, that 80% done is, by somebody else's 100% awesome.
Yes.
So they're never going to be you, probably. Although I will say there are certain things that I delegate now where I'm like, "Oh, that's better than I would have done it." And you learn that lesson over time, and that makes it a lot easier to let go.
Yeah. I went through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, and that was one of the things that they said was, "You have to be 80% needs to is perfect. 80% needs to be okay." And the whole room just audibly groaned in unison because, that's a hard thing. Like I said, mindset has a lot to do that well, and so speaking of your podcast, I know you've interviewed a lot of people. It's a long running how long have you been running that
I
podcast now?
started it in 2005. I've done
Yeah.
well over 2,000
So you were
episodes.
podcasting before podcasting was cool. You were
There were only a handful of us in the marketing space, at least, and I suspect I'm in, the a group of 25 or so shows that have been, continuously running since that point period.
So are there some guests that stick out in your mind that gave you a piece of wisdom that stuck with you? It's like sometimes you watch a movie and it just sticks.
Yeah.
Do you have any
I,
guests like
I,
that?
yeah, I would say lots. And part of that is, I tell people all the time, I started my podcast because it was an excuse for those people to talk to me. I mean, I had people on my show initially that, they didn't know who I was, but podcasting was new enough and they kind of got, yeah, this person's going to promote my book. Sure, I'll come on the show. So and a lot of times even today, I still select guests because I'm like, I really kind of want to ask them a couple questions. And if I wrote them an email and said, "Hey, you want to jump on a call and chat for 20 minutes?" I probably wouldn't get very far. But if I'm going to agree to promote and use my platform to promote their work, their book, they're more than happy to. And so I frankly, I've had very few guests that I'd say, "Oh, that wasn't a great interview," because even though I've done a lot of shows, I mean, we do two a week, and so I can be pretty selective about who I want to have on the show. I get 10, 15 pitches a day for people to be on the show, and I so far I haven't run out of people I want to talk to.
I as a marketer, as a fellow marketer, you, I'm sure you will agree, the core principles of marketing have not changed.
Not at all.
In spite of all the technology and all the new shiny, I call them, I caution my clients about chasing rabbits and squirrels. Like, stay in your lane, stay the course, keep to your whatever. Um, what's never changed for you? How does that resonate for you?
Well, 100%. I mean, I started my business. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have websites. So you imagine all the change, that's gone on. But fundamentally, what we are here to do, and I think it's why my business has been able to stick around as long as it has and evolve, is because fundamentally, what we're here to do is to get someone who has a need to know, like, and trust us. Now, the vehicles we use, the way that they make purchases and do their own research, those have all changed. So I have stuck to a very narrow point of view. Marketing is a system, starts with strategy before tactics. I don't think that'll ever change, quite frankly. But we also aggressively pursue every new tool, not to be an early adopter or to get first mover advantage or all the things people talk about, but we want to analyze, will this tool allow us to actually do a better job at getting someone who has a need to know, like, and trust us. That's, to me, that's the filter that I run every single thing through when we're looking at, when it was Twitter, and then it was, all the ad platforms that came along, and certainly now with AI today. That's how we have to evolve, and we have to understand the behavior that the buyer wants to go through to do business with us, and the tools actually make a lot of that happen. But fundamentally, what our job as marketers hasn't changed.
Yeah. So, you ever think about if you had to start over? What would you do first to try and get some traction?
Well, I tell people this all the time, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it's certainly what I did originally. I mean, I did build, somewhat of a name by, I'll be the first to admit, I looked at blogging and thought that looked like a great way to write content and get it out there in the world. Turned out that was that was great timing is what that was because I jumped on that, really early on, and that did a lot for my business in terms of building an international brand. Quite frankly, because blogging became really really hot. But what it really allowed me to do was create strategic partnerships, and I think start if I were to start over again, I would find people who had my target audience already. It was part of their community. And I would spend a lot of time working on finding how I could bring value to their audiences. That to me is, anytime when I go and speak at a conference and I get this, what you just asked me, I'm just
Mhm.
starting, what should I do? I get that question every single time. And that's the answer I've been saying for 25 years is go find somebody who already has your audience, find ways to deliver value to them and let them expose you to their audience. And you do that a dozen times and all of a sudden, you've got thousands and thousands of people who now know who you are, and hopefully you've built some trust with.
I think that speaks to the whole value of keeping things simple.
Yep.
I think we make it more complicated than it is. And the entrepreneur mind tends to be an overthinker mind anyway. So, when we can kind of calm that down and think simply in terms of step one, step two, step three, repeat, and do that over and over and just execute, execute, rather than chase the new shiny whatever trend. Yeah, I love
And
that.
it's and the hardest thing is just to stay focused. I mean, I really empathize with business owners that, especially with, that they didn't get into business to necessarily to be marketers or to learn all this technology. They have something that they've created that they want to bring to the world. And now they're getting, 10 emails a day of people telling them, that they'll do this with AI for them or they'll build this bot for them. And
Mhm.
it's like, where do, who do you trust? Where does it end? And I think that's really, in some small measure, I'd like to think that that's, how people view our brand is like, you're not going to sell me something that, is just the greatest, it's going to fit into something that might actually work for me long term. And that, that trust and that relationship with, your community is pretty much everything.
Yeah. I when I started my business, I would say that I had more distractions than most business owners. I was homeschooling five children as a single mom, and I called it Facing the Mortgage. And I wrote a book a few years ago called The Juggle is Real, specifically for mompreneurs because it is hard. It's like so and so's got soccer, and you've got dinner
Yeah, I
going
can't. I
on,
yeah,
all the
I
things.
yeah.
And
No, I can't imagine. I mean, I give 100% credit to my spouse as being able to support. We have 4 daughters, and I mean that so the support that she allowed me to really build this business when I was building it was I really I applaud you because I don't know I wouldn't have I couldn't have done it.
I couldn't do it now because 'cause I'm older. I don't have the energy. So if there was one simple, practical, tactical thing that someone could do today that would impact their business tomorrow, what would that look like?
Well, so this isn't going to make the phone ring, but I think long term, it's the best thing that you could do, practical, tactical thing. And that is go out and look at all your customers right now and rank them. I mean, obviously, every business is different in terms of their customer makeup, but try to rank them by profitability. And, because we all have customers who are like, why are we doing business with them still? So try to rank them by profitability. And then look at a few of them and say, well, these people have actually, I like working with them. They've actually sent us some referrals. I mean, really kind of get a sense of 8 or 10 customers, let's just say the goal that you would say to yourself, if I had 8 or 10 more like that, life would be great. And then pick up the phone and call all 8 or 10 of them and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you for about 15 minutes." Just ask them questions about how they found you in the first place, why they stick with you, what do you do that other people don't, and don't let them stop at, "Oh, well, you provide great service," because that's not very useful.
Right.
Try to get them to tell stories. I mean, I my favorite question is, tell me when somebody says to me, "Oh, they provide good service," I say, "Tell me a story about a time when they provided you good service." And then they just start babbling on about this stuff that's like emotional and real, and so start
Right.
to understand, are there recurring, when you do those interviews, you will, generally speaking, in my experience, start to hear some repeating themes and things that are really kind of gold for your messaging, and you probably should put above the fold on your homepage. Something. So I'll give you an example. We had a service that mows lawns on a subscription. They're in Texas, so it's like year round that they're mowing lawns. And they had on their homepage, it said, for as low as $29.99 a week. I mean, that was their selling pitch. We interviewed a few of their clients, and they showed up when they said they were going to. They were did meticulous work. I mean, they really were careful about who they hired. I mean, so they were trustworthy, and that came out. But we heard 2 or 3 times people saying, what I love best is I just love coming home on mowing day. I come home, I drive up from work, it's been a crappy day.
Yeah.
And, it's like, wow, my yard looks amazing. And that kind of emotional message, you'll love coming home on mowing day, all this tells the whole story without you having to say, we're great.
Right.
And so that, listening for those kind of themes, when you interview your customers, I mean, can go so far in terms of you getting the message that is right and real for attracting your ideal client.
Yeah. And I would say there probably was a time when competing on price was a necessity, but not anymore. I would say that people value that dependability,
Well, and
showing
the
up
experience.
every day, doing a good job. Yeah, it's about the experience rather than the price.
Yeah, I mean, I read a recent survey. It was like 2,000. These were consumers, not businesses, but 86% of them said they had and were willing to pay more for a better experience.
Yeah. Uh, this has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from you over the years. Where can people go to learn more about you and what you have to offer?
Sure. So the easiest place is just ducttapemarketing.com. That's where I've been doing stuff for years. So it's DUCTTAPE marketing.com. And we act as fractional CMO and, do this strategy work for clients as well as the full implementation. But we also license our fractional CMO system to other agencies and consultants and fractional CMOs around the world as well. So you kind of can pick your flavor there. It's you can find it all at ducttapemarketing.com.
Wonderful. Thank you, John.
Awesome.